Hello everyone, welcome to my little work tour of Syslog protocol messages extending its support to Tremor. I'm Nupur Agarwal, an undergraduate at Indian Institute of Technology, Roorkee. I contributed to Tremor from March to May this year as a part of spring chapter of LFX Mentorship Program 2021. My project was broadly divided into three milestones, namely syslog codec, textual and prefix pre and post processor, and adding support for TLS via TCP. I'll also speak about what is PropTest and how did I utilize it in the project. So let's start. Project abstract. So as you might have got an idea up till now, my work was to enable Tremor to receive and send syslog protocol messages. Now there have been different syslog protocols being in use. There's one old BSD format and then the standard IETF format. So it was desired that Tremor support both of these via UDP and TCP TLS. So I started with enabling syslog support to Tremor via UDP. Syslog messages are usually sent via UDP, where one UDP packet contains one syslog message. Now Tremor has on-ramps for receiving data from external world. So UDP on-ramp already supported receiving data via UDP datagrams. Now it was needed to convert these data or syslog messages into Tremor's internal representation or a proper structured value. For this kind of data handling, Tremor has codecs. Now, codecs used to describe how to decode data from the wire and encode it back to the wire format. So the first milestone of my project was to implement a syslog codec, which, as its name suggests, could able to encode and decode syslog messages. The syslog codec processes a syslog message and returns an object with the fields like severity, facility, hostname, app name, message, proc ID, message ID, protocol, protocol version, structure data, and timestamp. Here's an example of how syslog codec processes a typical syslog message. This is a syslog message in a standard IETF format. It is passed through syslog codec and the syslog codec returns this kind of object. The severity and facility fields are extracted from the priority number, which is mentioned at the beginning of the syslog message in angular brackets, 165 in this case. So from the priority value, two values are extracted for severity and facility respectively. There are in total 8 severity options and 24 facility options, and each option has a particular value which it is mapped against. Then there is a protocol field which denotes the format of particular syslog message. For this particular example, RFC 5424 denotes the IETF format, and then there is protocol version which denotes version of the protocol. Then there is structure data, which is again an object which contains SD elements mapped against vector of objects of SD parents and SD values. Here's an example of a syslog message in BSD format. In this case, as you can see, the protocol field has value RFC 3164 and protocol version field is inapplicable for this format. Now after the implementation of syslog codec, Tremor could now receive and send syslog messages via UDP. So the next task was enabling Tremor to receive syslog messages via TCP. But before that, in order to support messages over TCP, we needed to support the RFC 5425 transport that contains the textual prefix before each message. For this kind of data handling, Tremor has preprocessor and post-processor. On-ramps can leverage preprocessor to transform the data before codecs are applied, and similarly off-ramps can leverage post-processors to frame the data after codecs are applied. These work on raw data streams and don't care about Tremor's internal representation. A typical syslog frame in TLS application data is represented by message length in ASCII digits, followed by a white space and then the syslog message itself. Also, it is possible for multiple syslog messages to be contained in one TLS record, or for a single syslog message to be transformed in multiple TLS records. So we needed a preprocessor that could extract the message from the TCP stream in accordance with the format. Also, we needed a post processor which could frame the data according to the standard syslog frame. So textual length prefix preprocessor gets the length through the syslog frame and then wait until the buffer is long enough and then extracts the right amount of data and returns it in a vector. Textual length prefix post processor prefixes the data provided to it with the length of the data in ASCII digits and a white space. Now, for testing the working of preprocessor, we performed property-based testing using PropTest. PropTest is a property-based testing framework written in Rust. Basically, instead of verifying the parser with certain set of inputs, we could use a random input provided by some random generator and could check that our parser produce the desirable results or not. This makes the code or the implementation more reliable and ensures that the implementation displays a certain property. In our case, processing the syslog frame and extracting the message. Here is an example of a test written on the same lines. In this example, there is a function which takes a length variable between the range of 1 to 100. It could be any random number between 1 to 100. Then it produces a data vector of the given length and passes that vector to post processor. Now post processor, as we discussed, appends the vector with data length and a white space. Now this standard syslog frame is then passed to preprocessor and it returns again the original data vector, and it is checked that it returns the original data vector or not. Similarly, other tests were also written for random data sizes and random data lengths, which could be found in the code base. Now, after achieving this milestone, Tremor could now process the data correctly or the syslog messages correctly which it received from TCP. But there was one major milestone left, that was adding TLS support over TCP on-ramp and off-ramp. It was again divided into two parts. The first part was receiving TLS encrypted data via TCP on-ramp. TCP on-ramp listens on a specified port for inbound TCP data. TLS option was added to the TCP on-ramp configuration options, and if the TLS config is provided, on-ramp acts as a TCP TLS server and expects SSL or TLS traffic from clients. There are two options in TLS config, that is cert and key. Cert denotes the server certificate or certificate chain file, whereas key denotes the private key file. Here is an example of TCP with TLS. As you can see, the options in config are host, which denotes the IP to listen on, port denotes the port to listen on, and then there is TLS config, which provides the path to certificate and key files. Please note that the TCP on-ramp program prefers to load PKCS8 keys, and then only it attempts to load RSA keys if no PKCS8 keys are found. Now the second part was sending TLS encrypted data via TCP off-ramp. Now TCP off-ramp, as we already discussed, connects on a specified port for distributing outbound TCP data. To its supported configuration options, TLS was added. Now TLS could be enabled by providing a boolean true value or a detailed config. In either case, TCP socket will be wrapped with a TLS session. The default value for this option was false, and the options added to TLS config was domain and CA file. Here is an example of TCP off-ramp where the TLS set as true. In this case, TCP off-ramp verifies the server it connects to and its certificates against the host config in a set of common root certificates provided by Mozilla via webPKI routes. And there is an example of TCP with a detailed TLS config. Now if CA file is provided, TCP off-ramp will only accept server certificates signed by the given root certificates. And if TLS domain is provided, this value will be used instead of host to verify the domain name provided in server certificate. It could be really useful if an IP address is used as host config, and in the case if domain is not provided, it will simply use host. So with this implementation, TLS support was added to TCP, and Tremor could now receive and send syslog messages via TCP also. Hey, so I'm gonna give a little demo of Tremor sending and receiving messages through UDP and TLS. So I'll begin with UDP and then I'll give the TLS walkthrough. So for UDP, we'll first need to set up a UDP server through Tremor. So here's a config for the same. We define UDP and we define ID and type as UDP, codec as syslog, and this server will listen on localhost port 12345. So let's start this server. So the server is now listening on the given host and port, and the server will log out the messages after being decoded onto the screen. So let's try and send some messages to the server. For sending messages, we can use logger. So let's try with it. Logger server is localhost. Port will be 12345 and the mode will be UDP, and let's send the message hello world to the server. Let's see what happens to the server side. Yeah, as we can see, it receives the message hello world and it decoded it through its syslog codec, and as we can see, here is the message in the message field hello world. Now let's try to send the message using Tremor. So we'll need to set up a UDP client for the same. Here's a config file for the UDP client. It uses a source as input.json from where it will pick the messages, and in input.json I've already put an example of syslog message which in which all the fields are defined, like the host name, message ID, app name, and there's also some structured data, and at the end there is this syslog message I am foobar. So let's start our UDP client and use that to send this syslog message to a UDP server. So you are now client running and it must have sent the message to server. Let's look at the server side. Yeah. So as you can see, let me long the window. As you can see, the server received the message with the host name and timestamp and all the protocol version at the right, and it put all the structured data in different structured elements, and here is our message, I am Foobar. So that's how Tremor receives and sends the message using UDP. Now let's walk through TLS example. As we did with UDP, let's first set a TLS server, and for the TLS server, here is the config. One thing is to be noted is the preprocessors that is needed to be used in case of TLS, as discussed in the files for the message protocol to be followed, and it will be requiring the certificate and key path files. Also, I have defined one more thing here, that will print the raw message first before printing the structured data, just to give more insight. So let's start this TLS server. So our TLS server is started, and it is listening on the defined host and port. Now we'll use a TLS client to send the syslog messages to the server. So this is a config file for the TLS client. As earlier, it will also send the same data defined in the input.json, and in the TLS config we have defined the CA file and domain. Also, it is necessary to define the post processors here also. Codec will be syslog. So let's start this client. Yeah, so the client started and it must have sent the message to the server. Let's peek at the server side. Yeah, so as you can see, the server first prints the raw message it receives, and then the structured data after decoding it, as in the case of UDP. Also, one thing is to be noticed that it is not necessary in this particular example to define domain, as we are not using an IP address for the host. So the domain will pick up by default will pick up the host option for the domain. So let's try by commenting out this domain part and restarting our client. Yeah, so the client started and the server again receives the same message. So as we can see in this particular example, it wasn't needed to define domain, and if we do not define domain, it by default picks up the host option. So this summed up my project. As it was my first time working on such a project, I had many hiccups during the project, but my mentors were always there at my rescue. It was a great learning and fun experience working with Tremor. You can find Tremor community at their Discord server, and to learn more about LFX mentorship program, please refer to the given link. Thank you for listening.
Well, that was our first talk. Thank you everyone for watching, and special thanks to Nupur here on my right for recording and giving the talk. Let's start with something simple. On the Q&A, Nupur, would you like to introduce yourself? Tell people a bit about you.
Yeah, sure. Hello everyone, myself Nupur Agrawal, and I'm from India, and I've started working with the Tremor community since March this year as a part of LFX mentorship program.
Thank you. Wonderful. Well, that was so far. Let's jump right into questions. Because I'm kind of curious. what made you decide to apply to this mentorship particularly? Why Tremor?
Okay.
Why
Yeah.
Sysmic?
Yeah, actually, I was looking for some open source programs or the open source projects to contribute to and to learn from. And just when I was skidding through certain programs and opportunities online, I found about CNCF, and then I searched more about its projects that it offers. I always have followed a few of its projects, but I've never heard of Tremor before. So when the list of projects came in the, I think, beginning of March, I searched about Tremor, and then I joined its community to learn more. And the work it offered, the Syslog one, it was similar to my interest and also things which I worked on earlier. So like it was about reading the RFCs and then implementing it, and so
Which is an interesting topic since your mentorship actually involved working very closely with a specification of an RFC. Um,
yeah.
was it something that was made it easier or harder?
Well, actually, I have experience of working with RFCs. So, uh, when I first worked with RFCs, I actually didn't know how to even approach the RFCs, how to pay words through the keywords that are mentioned in RFCs, like the importance of the keywords must, not, should, and uh, what value they hold. So yeah, in the first one, it was hard for me, but when I was working on this, I actually know what to like, what things do I need to pay attention on, and how to approach the implementation throughout.
That's pretty cool. Working with a formal specification like that is not something people do a lot. Could you give our viewers a little set of tricks, hints if someone approaches this for the first time? And what would you have loved to know before you handled that the first time? What kind of advice would you give someone that approaches an RFC or any other formal specification for the first time?
Yeah, actually, for the RFC, one thing I learned was firstly, it is necessary to pay attention to the keywords and the meanings they hold. They generally mention it at the first page or the second page of the RFCs. So, paying attention to that means a lot, because some things are optional and like some things are compulsory when you are doing an implementation. So you just can't neglect the compulsory one points. Also, like I read a paper before, like first, like how to that was a paper on like how to read a paper. So it was a like good example. It said you should read a paper at least thrice. Like in the first two reads you just get the details and like headlines, and as you read further, like again and again, you get the details of the paper and the points you can actually work on.
That's really good advice. Thank you. Um, out of curiosity, since we are still a bit in the meta realm of things,
Yeah.
what was the most interesting thing you learned in the 3 months with the project?
Yeah, the most interesting thing I happened to work was on the property-based testing. Like, I have written a test before of for the code, but I have never done something like testing. Like it was new to me. I was working on it for the first time, and I really like the concept how you test the code for any arbitrary inputs given in it. So,
Matthias put in the question, and this is actually a very good one to contrast this. Um, what is the most annoying thing you had to deal with as part of this project? Other than me.
no. Um, Most annoying thing, I would say, most annoying thing for me was the testing part, because in the case the test works, it was like, yeah, like a yippee kind of situation. But in the case when the test did not work, it was sometimes very hard to debug for me. Like I couldn't find the problem logically, and I have to check that whether the packets are going wrong, or is the server receiving the packets or not. So
Mhm.
debugging at that level was very difficult for me. But yeah, math has helped me like whenever I got blocked in these kind of situations.
this end-to-end testing is really tricky. You not only implemented Syslog for the first time of this in this mentorship, but if I recall correctly, you also learned Rust in those 3 months, right?
Yeah, yeah. I've never worked there on Rust earlier.
That is pretty amazing. How did you enjoy that, going into a completely new ecosystem out of your comfort zone?
Yeah, actually, what remains the same working along the languages is the logic part, and like the logic, you if you know what the logic you have to implement, it is not that hard. But when you approach a new language, the thing that becomes hard is like what is the syntax, what other things you need to use, like all the things like creates modules. I have no idea. Like for like writing a simple function also in the beginning, it took me so much time because I didn't know what creates to use, what modules to use to like just implement that thing. So yeah, I knew how to get it done. Sorry, what to get done, but I don't know. I didn't knew how to get it done. So yeah, that was difficult in the beginning.
It's an interesting situation. It's like a yeah, same logic. It's a very good description how you put it. Would you want to work with Rust again, or have you have enough of this? Never.
No, no, no. I just after working in in Rust for 3 months, I realized like why people say like Rust is a beautiful language.
So you,
Yeah, I
you, you
told.
will stick with the community.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
That's wonderful. This is number one on our convert people to Rust agenda. Thank you for that. So going a bit more into the tremor and part of your work, what possible applications do you see coming out of your contribution of adding Syslog and TLS to Tremor?
Yeah, actually, when I started working on this tremor, I asked the mentors also like, what is the use of implementing, and the reply was like, there is many user base of tremor community or tremor project which are using syslog. So it will be helpful for that particular group of users to have tremor this feature working.
That's yeah, there are a lot of that's a good one. So if you had to give people that are looking to contribute, people that are perhaps looking at other mentorships, a suggestion, what would be your number one tip for them?
Yeah, I would say don't feel restricted by the technology or technology the project is using or the things they are working on. If you are intrigued by the idea of the project and the working of the project, then you can just give it a go, and like you will learn in the go, and don't hesitate to take the first step.
That's good. Um, so your project was twofold. It was the Codex and TLS, right?
Yeah.
Since I suspect a lot of viewers don't know what Codex in the Tremor world are. Because it's something, well, it's not something specific to us, but it means something specific inside of Tremor.
Yeah.
Would you quickly run us through where the codec in the whole scheme of things fits in?
Yeah, codecs basically help with the dealing of the data inside the tremor. Like we receive the data in the raw form from the wire and we convert it into the tremor internal representation and vice versa using codecs. So that's where the codec plays the main role.
And on the second part, TLS, because to understand your contribution, I think it's good for people to actually understand all the parts that are involved. That went into the connector, right?
Yes.
Namely TCP. So same as with Codex, can you give our viewers a quick rundown what the connector or on ramp and off ramp
Yeah,
sources things are?
as I read, like on ramp and off ramps are basically is basically a gateway of Tremor to the outside world data. It helps in receiving the data from like other platforms and transfer it into the interior of the Tremor.
That's good. So on that note, you haven't worked with pipelines and the internals of Tremor. Well, the internals of the pipeline, and that's fine. So we'll not go into detail on that, but a later talk might touch on that. What is there a design decision you specifically enjoyed in your project, or or the outside of your project you touch with, which you think would be nice for people to learn about?
Yeah, actually, I like how the whole process of how Tremor receives the data and like processes it through. There are specific components for dealing every steps. It's not like piling up of the code unnecessary. There are specific and different components made. Like there are codecs, then there are pre-processor, post-processors, and the data from starting from the on-ramp and till it reaches to the internal representation of Tremor, like goes through every component which is required. So yeah, that makes the work also easy, and that makes the expansion of Tremor
Mm-hmm.
also easy. Like in the case, suppose like for example, as I implemented the syslog, so I don't have to uh, go here and there in the code. Like it was very specific which components to deal with and which components to add. So yeah, making different components and makes it easy for the expansion also and understanding also for new developers.
That's a good insight. Um, so on a slightly different note, um, this was also your first talk on a conference, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, yes.
And TremorCon obviously has 1 million people attending, so it's the biggest conference on the planet, which is a lie. Next year you will be there. Um, I suspect that too was quite exciting. Um, and I will go and ask the same question I asked about the mentorship, because I think that learning and sharing is always a really, really important part of those things. What hints and tips would you give people that are talking the first time? What did you learn from it? What do you think you nailed? What was a mistake you think you did, and would someone who does it the first time avoid because you didn't know about it? So you are passing your knowledge on, so the next person can learn from
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, like I believe like what I know like up till now in the field of this all software development or technology or anything is mainly because the community I have been a part of from like beginning. So it's good to like share your thoughts on these things and pass on your knowledge, and also like uh, take tips from people who are working on different things. It's always good to know. And when you start beginning on something, it's better to first have a clear insight of that thing, like and proper process, or you can say proper milestone setup before you just dive into the actual coding part. Like that can be done if you just have the understanding first. Like that takes the most time.
you.
You should know what to do.
Yeah, that's very true. People are usually harder than code.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. They just dive in. Then in the middle of the code, they realize that they started on the right, on the wrong path, and then they have to start from the scratch again. So it's better to just have that understanding beforehand.
that's a good advice. Um, so since we are slowly closing to the end of the Q&A, we have like 9 minutes left only. Um, let's use a moment and give you a chance to share what are your next goals, what you're working on. Do you plan to stay in the open source world, or was this it? I'll never do open source again. Um, or are you having any interesting personal projects? I know you're on Twitter, so people can probably follow you there if they're interesting on your
Yeah.
work in your work. So what's next after the mentorship?
Yeah, actually, I've been working on open source since 2 years now, and yeah, it has been a major learning path for me. I've learned most from the open source and the people and the community I have found there. So yeah, and there are like many personal projects also on my GitHub handle. So I want to like grow in the field of systems. I want to like be a system engineer in it. after I graduate or like leave from college. So I'm learning in that field. I'm reading book also, and like I'm learning through the theory part. I don't know like what part to follow clearly as of me also. So I'm just like whatever the resources I'm finding on the open source or through the people, I'm just grabbing on those. Also, like uh, I'm I'm learning through this new. I'm like currently reading about eBPF mostly like the new tech style, and yeah, I'm following for that. I'm majorly following Brendan Gragg for that as a software developer at Netflix. I'm following his blogs to learn and like yeah,
He's
I
great.
think that yeah, he's like I appreciate him a lot. Like following developers' blogs are like a great source of learning. Like there are some developers who maintain like regular technical blogs, and reading those blogs, like those blogs are just 5 to 10 minutes read, and reading to those blogs give a huge insight of what is going latest in the technology, and like what things you can do and what stuff is
Mm.
going on. So yeah, I found those also a very great source of learning.
So we have a question from the audience, and uh, it would be great to get your input on that, and I'll read it. Is there a specific technical background required to join the Tremor mentorship program? What was your experience and impression on that? What would you say after going through it?
Yeah, like I don't think there are as such any technical needs, as long as you know like what you are interested in, and you have a zeal to like contribute to the Tremor community, and you know the basics whereabouts of the programming and the technology. Like uh, you are like good to go, and I don't think any such hard experience is needed, as this program is I think mostly meant for students only. So
Yeah, that's a good write up. I think that mirrors pretty much what the team would say to that. If you apply. We are happy to teach. No super strong background required.
yeah,
It will differ from task to task. Some will have just give you an
yeah,
advantage if you know about it. For example, Nupa, you know about working with RFCs, and you
yes, yes.
shared that in your cover letter and application, which admittedly was something that influenced our decision at the end.
And also like it is not necessary you can contribute to Tremor community only through this program. Like you can anyone, like I think anyone can contribute to Tremor as it is open source. Yeah.
Yeah, and we're
And people
generally
are
happy to
yeah,
help.
and yeah.
And I think our mentees, the past mentees, hopefully become future mentors and might help you as well if you have a question. At this point, shameless plug to our Discord server, chat.tremor.rs. Someone will put it in the chat again, I am sure, because it has scrolled up. You can catch us there every moment of the day when we are not sleeping. Which we are doing at least once a day, or trying to. Um, so you touched on something which I absolutely love, the eBPF work from Brandon
Yeah.
Gregg. I'm an old Solaris user and used to use dtrace,
Oh,
which is like not the predecessor, but it was the Solaris version of that, and a lot of Brandon Gregg's work, I believe, is influenced on it, because he also worked on dtrace. Um, do you see an application for that in and for Tremor?
for of BPF.
Yes.
Yeah, like I do not have that much like knowledge to like to evaluate that thing. Yeah, I
That's
think like data can be handled using for eBPF, but like I don't know like where would the tracing part would help the Tremor as such. Like I don't really have that.
that's totally fair. That was a bit of a curveball question too. So we have only a few more minutes left, like 3. At this point, any famous last words you want to share with the viewers and the audience? Something to give them before we cut to a little break, since it's kind of morning-ish in some parts of the world, and we'll all need to get more coffee.
Yeah, one thing I always say is like, and I always have felt also is that whenever we start learning something, the beginning is the hardest step. Like there is always the beginning resistance. Like you doubt yourself that whether you would be able to do that or not. So like it's just better to just dive in through the path, and it will lead you to like somewhere at a good place. So yeah, it's better to like start anyhow or somehow. It you'll be taken care of, and like do not fear of beginnings.
That's a good advice. I think a lot of people also know this as part of the wonderful imposter syndrome, which we all share in the tech community. Yes.
Yeah, like how whatever we learn, we always feel that we know nothing or something like that.
There's always someone who knows more, and we feel like,
Yeah.
how have we ever ended up here? Like, how have we two ended up on this stream? God knows.
Yeah.
Anyway, it is coffee break time. Thank you all for watching so far. We will cut to a coffee break for about 15 minutes and then continue with the work of Jigyasa on GCS and Google PubSub at 12 o'clock German time. So, about 15-ish minutes. See you all then, and enjoy your break. And again, Nupur, 1,000 thanks for speaking and doing this wonderful Q&A with us.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
See you.